Tonight, knockout. The prosecution's star witness takes a beating on cross-examination. How the case against former President Trump is going down with Michael Cohen's credibility. Ready to rumble. Joe Biden slaps high tariffs on Chinese goods. Is this proof he can fight for the working class vote? And healthcare by hashtag. How anxiety and depression became almost cool. Dr. Drew Pinsky on diagnosis by peer pressure. Welcome to the Ferris Show on television. We start tonight with all the president's men. Former President Trump's VP hopefuls are lining up at his trial daily. It is an episode every day of Celebrity Apprentice VP Edition, essentially doing what Mr. Trump can't because of a gag order. They've slammed the case against Trump, fine. They've gone after the star witness, Michael Cohen, again, fair game. Trump hired Cohen because he would do and say anything. Now he'll do and say anything to land Trump in jail. We're going to get to the trial in a minute. Somehow, and this is sort of remarkable, it has gone downhill since Stormy Daniels testified. That is hard to believe, but it is true. Even got a chuckle out of George Will on that one. But over the past few days, big-name Republicans have gone after the same person with the same script. The judge's daughter. Watch Speaker of the House Mike Johnson even appear to actually read from a script outside the courthouse in attacking this young woman.
The judge's own daughter is making millions of dollars doing online fundraising for Democrats.
You've got relatives of the judge that are benefiting financially, directly, from this trial.
His daughter's making money, raising money for Democrats?
Judge Merchan's own family member collecting millions of dollars as a Democratic operative.
The judge inside, his daughter is making millions of dollars running against Donald Trump, raising money for Donald Trump's political opponents.
Same script. Attacking a daughter is cheap. They might be factually correct. Trump's base loves it, but it's punching down. It's conduct unbecoming a gentleman, as my mother would say. Trump will never convince America he can be a gentleman, but his vice president could. Someone like Mike Pence, America believes he was a decent man. They believed it in 2016 after the Access Hollywood tape. He proved that he was a decent and honorable man on January 6th. Just from a political standpoint, now more than ever, Donald Trump needs someone to convince middle America that there will be someone normal in his administration, anybody normal, that he can't fire. That's the vice president. Just look at the list of people who have shown up at the Trump trial. Mike Johnson, Doug Burgum, Vivek Ramaswamy, J.D. Vance, Tommy Tuberville. We'll get to all of them. They are all lining up to read literally from Donald Trump's script. The Huffington Post calls the race to be Trump's vice president a cult. Quote, not even the threats against Mike Pence on January 6th are making Republicans think twice about being Donald Trump's vice president. George Will's here, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the Washington Post, also NewsNation's senior political contributor. I'm wondering if the Huffington Post is right, but for the wrong reasons. Not in that people are willing to so sacrifice themselves to be Donald Trump's vice president, which they are. But by sacrificing themselves, they are giving up the very thing that would convince swing voters to vote for them and Donald Trump, thus making him more electable.
If there were any evidence, Leland, and there's precious little, that a vice presidential nominee has any effect one way or the other. 1968, Agnew was supposed to be a handicap to Nixon. Nixon won. 1968, Dan Quayle was supposed to be a handicap to George Herbert Walker Bush. Herbert Walker Bush won. The only time in American history that you could plausibly say a vice presidential nominee mattered was 1960, when Lyndon Johnson helped John Kennedy hold the South in a tight election.
I'll give you two more.
All right.
2008, Sarah Palin undoubtedly hurt John McCain. 2016, Mike Pence undoubtedly helped Donald Trump.
Correct, but I believe that Obama would have won in any case. Same is true with.
So you don't believe that Mike Pence is reassuring the evangelical community?
It helped. Sure.
Okay.
It did.
As we look at this, though, in terms of how this plays out, betting odds for Trump's VP pick: J.D. Vance 10-1, Marco Rubio 12-1, Byron Donalds 40-1, Doug Burgum 5-1. He's the one that I thought was perhaps most interesting, and then on the far end, Nikki Haley 58-1, of people who the center would find the most appealing.
You notice what we're not talking about? Who might be a good president if something happened to Donald Trump? That never enters the conversation. In my judgment, Burgum, who's been a governor and is an intelligent man and an accomplished man, would fit that bill. But that will probably have not much to do with how this is done. Used to be, Leland, you could pick someone if you had a particular state you needed to carry. There are only 7 states in play this year, so that's not going to work. Or you could take a constituency. African Americans are somewhat movable. Some people feel Tim Scott,
yeah.
Yeah.
Or you think we're looking at this right, of all of these people coming out to line up behind Trump as the VP audition? If you don't line up, you're not going to get a chance?
Probably.
All right. So J.D. Vance, I know one of your favorite senators, shockingly does not agree with your assessment. Take a listen.
A Democratic strategist said, why are they all there defending his affair with a porn star? Is that what you're doing?
No, not at all, Martha. I mean, look, I was there to support a friend.
Friendship's touching and lovely, isn't it?
Yeah. For the friend you once called a Nazi, as J.D. Vance did. Where does this go from here? You cannot be any more sycophantic than these men already have been. And it is still, 3 months until a pick?
You think it can't get worse? Remember Will's Law. There's no such thing as rock bottom. Just watch these guys.
All right. So there's J.D. Vance. Behind J.D. Vance is Tommy Tuberville. And he's a senator from Alabama. Another profile in courage that exists in America. What I think is most interesting about this is that they're all reading from the same script, attacking the judge's daughter, because the judge has put a gag order in front of Donald Trump saying, you can't. So therefore, he is having all of his friends come and attack the judge's daughter, as if somehow that's going to change someone's mind about the trial. Here's Tommy Tuberville admitting as much.
Hopefully we have more and more senators and congressmen go up every day to represent him and be able to go out and overcome this gag order. And that's one of the reasons we went, is to be able to speak our piece for President Trump.
Okay, I get it. Does telling Newsmax viewers or Fox News viewers or even NewsNation viewers that the judge's daughter is raising money as a Democratic operative change anybody's view of the trial or of Donald Trump?
No, it makes everyone involved look small. By the way, Tommy Tuberville, great football coach at Auburn, was asked, as a senator, could he name the 3 branches of government? He said, yes, the executive, the House, and the Senate. The prosecution rests.
As you said, Will's Law, it can get worse. Is there anybody on the VP list? And I'm not going to ask you who would make a good president, because you already said Doug Burgum. He's been on the show. I've been quite impressed with him and impressed with his record in North Dakota when you study it. Is there anybody out there that Donald Trump could pick that would help him?
Perhaps the governor of Iowa.
Kim Reynolds. Not Nikki Haley.
Nikki Haley and he are oil and water. They just don't get along. Now, Kennedy and Johnson didn't really get along, but they made up and won an election. I'd be very surprised if Nikki Haley, who has a future, wants to attach herself to this particular falling star.
Well, Ronald Reagan and H.W. Bush didn't exactly get along either.
Correct.
All right. Mr. Will, always good to see you, sir.
See you.
We appreciate it. Michael Cohen has gone from star witness to punching bag. It happened right after lunch today, while Team Trump sees Cohen as the guy who can still fix the former president's legal woes.
Donald, once again, he comes out of the courtroom and goes right into that little cage, which is where he belongs, in a caged like an animal.
And President Biden talks tough with China, leveling tariffs against Beijing that are even harsher than Trump's. Is it too late for middle-class Joe to get the middle-class vote?
Trump said today China is eating our lunch. What do you say in response? He said China is eating our lunch. That's what Trump said today. We've been feeding it a long time.
Court wrapped up a few hours ago for Donald Trump. Tomorrow he has off for court. He is back on Thursday, continuing testimony of Michael Cohen, Trump's ex-fixer. And Donald Trump evokes strong emotions out of absolutely everyone. Just ask friends, families, your crazy uncle. And that is proving to be a huge problem in his criminal case. Michael Cohen is the prosecution's star witness. He's also a felon and an admitted perjurer, so a liar, and has a colorful history on social media. All right, we do not have the soundbite. It was the soundbite you heard going into the break where Michael Cohen was talking about how Donald Trump belongs in a bleeping cage, meaning in jail. With us now, Anthony Scaramucci, former White House communications director and one of multiple former officials to endorse President Biden. It is good to see you, sir. Is there an irony that so many who oppose Donald Trump are now pinning many of their hopes on Michael Cohen?
Well, I mean, listen, I mean, the thing everyone's leaving out of the narrative is that most people lie. We tell white lies, we tell black lies, and most people lie. And so the notion that he told a lie and went to jail for it, there are two lawyers on that jury. They know that most people lie as well, if not all people. And so him telling the truth right now, that's the question. Is he telling the truth? Of course he's telling the truth. But the real issue, Leland, will it matter come November? And even if Donald Trump is convicted, what are they going to do with Donald Trump? They're not going to put Donald Trump in jail. Could they put an ankle bracelet on him and tell him for a couple of weeks he has to stay at Mar-a-Lago? Could they make him pay a fine? They could do those things. But I don't really see how this case is going to stop him from attempting the presidency again in November. So I don't know who's pinning what on Michael Cohen. But I like Michael Cohen. I think Michael Cohen is a reformed person. I visited him twice in jail, full disclosure. I consider him a friend. And I think he's telling the truth. But I'm not pinning my hopes on that. What I'm pinning my hopes on is that I think that the average intelligence in the country is above 100 in terms of IQ. And I think you got to have something wrong with you at this point to vote for Donald Trump. And so I'm hoping that the majority of Americans, and particularly those in those swing states, are smart enough to see the systemic danger that he represents. And as this thing builds into the fall, I think the case will be made very strongly against Donald Trump come Election Day.
All right, there's a lot to unpack in that answer, but I'll start with the end, which is sort of that mindset of, people are smart enough and you have to be stupid to vote for Donald Trump is kind of how Donald Trump got elected in 2016. That was really Hillary Clinton's basket of deplorables and everything else. But I'll back up just a little bit, just from a tactical standpoint, for those who view Donald Trump as a real threat. Every one of these cases has helped Donald Trump in the polls. And if he is acquitted, probably if he's convicted, either way, it is going to help him in one way or another, because he'll declare victory either way. Are there any of the fancy Manhattanites who are sitting around trying to figure out how to beat Donald Trump saying, God, I really wish we had never gone down all of the indictment roads and had just focused on Donald Trump, the politician?
Okay, so a lot to unpack with that statement and question. So let me start with the first part. 2016, I was on that campaign, and Trump was presenting himself with some level of rudeness, but we thought his ascent into the presidency, he was going to be more moderate. I got that wrong. People can accuse me of getting that wrong and having bad judgment. That's fine. But there's now been 4 years of Donald Trump. There's evidence of what he did as president of the United States, not just his tweets, but the recklessness during COVID, his positioning relative to NATO and Vladimir Putin, and all of the different nonsense that he says on this campaign. He wants to take away the FCC licenses of people that are against him. He wants to go after his enemies. He told two of his defense lawyers, both of which have dropped him.
No,
from,
I get the list of grievances against Donald Trump. Polling would tell you most Americans
that wasn't
most
there
Americans
in 2016, Leland.
Okay, but polling would tell you a lot of Americans, at least a majority right now in swing states, would rather have Donald Trump than Joe Biden back. But I want to get back to your idea that most people lie, right? And everybody lies. I want to play for you some of MSNBC's thoughts on Michael Cohen's day in court. Take a listen.
Here with the gag order. Yes, the other day, Donald, once again, he comes out of the courtroom and goes right into that little cage, which is where he belongs, in a cage like an animal.
This is the day that Donald Trump looked most like a criminal. I thought it was a very bad day for him because his own lawyer, who famously went to prison, very clearly provided the timeline of a proactive plan to allegedly commit a crime.
I thought Cohen maintained, from my accounts of what I read yesterday, maintained the same equanimity today. He was relatively succinct. He sounded earnest.
All right. If everybody lies and you're willing to lie because you want Donald Trump in a cage, or you're willing to lie to get what you want, and now what you want is Donald Trump in a cage, isn't that the definition of reasonable doubt that you're admitting to?
Well, no, you have to ask yourself a question. I think the first part of the logic is everybody lies. Is this person lying right now, or the facts of that case, as he's elucidating them, are they true? And so if you get to the conclusion that they're true, and I believe that those 12 jurors will get to that conclusion, and then the question is he guilty? Is Donald Trump guilty of improper use of campaign finance money and hiding something that needed to be disclosed prior to that presidential election? And I think he'll probably be guilty of those things.
That's not what he's charged with. He's charged with falsifying business records. Not disclosing it.
Exactly. Okay. So whatever he's being charged with, Leland, the facts are there. He's guilty of what's being charged. That's my opinion. I know he's entitled to his day in court. But let me just say this. I don't really think that matters. What are they going to do to him? They're going to put an ankle bracelet on him for a few weeks. They're going to make him pay a fine. They're not putting him in jail. Michael Cohen went to Otisville. He was sentenced to 2 years. He got out because of COVID after a year, and he was put in home confinement. What are they going to do to the former president of the United States? They're going to put him in jail over a crime like this? I actually don't believe they're going to do that. So now maybe they will, but the real question is this helping or hurting him? And I think it hurts him with the independents. I hear what you're saying about his base has gone up. He's galvanized them with his base. But you have suburban women that don't like the bullying. They don't like the IVF issue. They don't like the Roe v. Wade abrogation by the Supreme Court. And they demonstrated that in 2022 during the midterm. So when push comes to shove, the women of this country are going to reelect Joe Biden. And this guy will be dealing with this guy in 2028 because he's got no money, Leland. He'll be running again in 2028, and he'll be further weakening what was the Republican Party.
Well, you heard it here first. I have not heard the 2028 proclamation. So we marked the tape.
Of course he's going to be running in 2028.
Okay. I got it. I hadn't heard it before. I think it's fascinating. Yeah. It's good to see you as always. Thank you.
Same here.
All right. President Biden has proposed tariffs on China that would have set off alarm bells on the left if Trump had proposed them. Could his, I don't know, is it fair to say his desperate play to bring blue-collar workers, will it finally bring blue-collar workers back to the blue party?
And now we're finally taking action to correct this long overdue problem. It's a travesty. Today, I'm defending America's national security by placing tariffs on foreign imports of steel and aluminum.
Live pictures of the White House. President Biden is trying his best to win back blue-collar voters, historically a key voting group for Democrats. He started by taking on China, announcing new tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, steel batteries, and more.
I'm determined that the future of electric vehicles will be made in America by union workers, period. And everyone deserves a fair shot. We leave nobody behind. That's the America we're building together. That's why I've never been more optimistic about our future.
Of course, leading up to the 2020 election, Democrats largely criticized Trump's trade war. It's a different story this time around, and that's fair. Politics is that way. United Auto Workers cheered the announcement almost immediately, making sure that major corporations have to pay a price for pitting worker against worker. Pushing wages lower and lower is a key part of a pro-worker trade policy. Today's announcement is a major step in the right direction. The announcement coincides with this new report from The Guardian newspaper, one path for Biden to lure blue-collar voters, find the economic villains. You have to pick fights, The Guardian quoted one pollster. And this is what really caught our eye about The Guardian's story. If you look closely at the image associated and they made up, two hats. The red hat, make America great again. Then the blue hat, establish U.S. dominance of microchips, invest in infrastructure while capping credit card fees and insulin prices. With us now, Richard Goodstein, Democratic strategist, former advisor to Bill and Hillary Clinton, Roma Daravi, former White House Deputy Director of Strategic Communications. Welcome, welcome. Thank you. Now on set. All right, Richard. I hear it all the time from Democrats, we have a messaging problem. Did that graphic just encapsulate it?
What I think the Biden campaign should communicate is that he's done more to stand up to entrenched special interests than any president ever. Let me give you an example. Everybody thought that pharma was untouchable. Donald Trump campaigned against standing up to pharma. And what did Joe Biden do? He got them to be able to negotiate prices under Medicare. It looked like big oil was untouchable, but he's basically taking them on by pushing clean energy and these junk fees that he's taking on. Again, Trump met with pharma executives and totally stood down after he promised to stand up to them. So he's actually doing things, in addition to all his accomplishments, the semiconductor bill and the...
Wait, the hat said it, right? Semiconductors and everything else.
Right.
This is the question. Is Donald Trump, though, missing an opportunity here, right? He gets up on the stump in New Jersey, and it is an impressive list of grievances, but it's a list of grievances, rather than, hey, these are all the things I did economically in my 4 years. This is where you are after Joe Biden. That's the difference.
Well, I would say he is doing that. And the idea that a blue-collar voter is not synonymous with an economic voter should go out the window. 78% of registered voters think the economy is doing poorly right now. That is directly affected from Joe Biden's policies. And so, you know, the hardworking American is going to have to take a look at their life.
You need some water or something?
Not actually, quite the contrary.
Hold on. But President Biden talked about the economy again today in an interview with Yahoo, in which he talked about the terrible economy he was given. And he said this exact same quote a week ago. Take a listen.
I think inflation has gone slightly up. It was at 9% when I came in, and it's now down around 3%.
Categorically untrue, Richard. And for all the talk of Donald Trump lies and fact checks and everything else, CNN fact checked that same statement a week ago, said absolutely untrue when Donald Trump left office, where inflation was. And yet Joe Biden repeats it. How is he not doing the same thing Donald Trump did about the economy?
The important stat around the economy is how people actually feel about their personal economics. And Axios, Harris did the poll, put something out earlier this year that said 63% are actually quite happy with their own economics. They think somehow, broadly, the economy is not doing well, but to themselves, for their family, their community, they're doing well. And they actually think in 2024 they're going to do better still. So I actually think that, look, we know inflation was worldwide. Thank you, Trump's buddy, Vladimir Putin, okay? Well, seriously, it was supply chain and Ukraine. That's what drove it worldwide, and that's why the Wall Street Journal said the other day the U.S. economy is the envy of the world. Wall Street Journal, not a friend of Biden's.
Okay, I'm sorry, maybe I was asking a different question than I thought I was. When Joe Biden came into office, inflation was 1.4%, not the 9% he said, Richard. And this is the point. He's telling everybody things are good. People, as you point out in polling, don't believe that, okay? Hence why in every poll on the economy, They say by double digits or more, it was better under Donald Trump. They trust Donald Trump more. Does lying about it help?
Yeah, so again, the statistics, it's true that it peaked at 9%, and you should be observing that. Again, this was a worldwide phenomenon. But if you look at gross domestic product growth, it's been 3 times under Biden what it was under Trump. Forget COVID, okay? The last 3 years of Obama's administration, 1.5 million more jobs were created than the first 3
I will tell you
Trump's.
I have a degree in economics, and you've confused me. I'm sorry.
Well,
but this is, I thought was
straightforward.
interesting. This is out of the Financial Times. Does Biden support blue-collar interests? 33% of people without a college degree say yes, but 52% with a college degree say yes. How does Donald Trump not screw this up, or how does he screw this up?
Well, he's campaigning right now in the battleground states that are paying attention to him. Just last weekend, he had over 100,000 people show up in New Jersey. I think what you're seeing right now is...
That may be like saying 9% inflation when I showed up. Come on. Really, 100,000?
You saw the numbers. They're out there. Look, Leland, the topic that we came in here on is China. And President Trump was tough on China.
He was the first one to talk about it.
Biden literally
He was the first one.
campaigned
All right, I gotta
against China, and now he's trying to flip
I'm really
the
sorry.
script.
We got to run.
All right.
All right.
There you go.
Thanks,
Good
Leland.
to see you.
Take
Thank
care.
you both.
Thank you.
All right. Easy question. When is racism okay? Is a decent American? You likely thought never. It should be a simple answer. The new pretzel of diversity causing problems for Biden's re-election team. Knows gays, trans folks, people who need to get abortions, people who might want to get abortions, people with student loans. She and Mr. Biden need all of those groups to win re-election. Here are her comments at the Asian Pacific American Institute for Congressional Studies 2024 Legislative Leadership Summit.
We have to know that sometimes people will open the door for you and leave it open, sometimes they won't. And then you need to kick that door down. Excuse my language.
There you go. She's right. Asians are discriminated against. And Kamala Harris is promising you she will fight for you. The Biden administration can't view Americans as just Americans. And they'll, being honest, they would tell you they win by dividing everybody and telling the collection of minorities that they will protect you against Donald Trump. They tell you that the MAGA types are out to get you, the minorities, and they will protect you. It's just a fact. The problem for Team Biden is all these subgroups have different interests. For example, many of the doors blocking Asians are in the form of affirmative action policies to help other minority groups. For example, this chart is the average SAT scores for admitted students at Harvard by race. An Asian applicant needed an almost perfect score. They're in red. But because of affirmative action, other demographics got in with far lower scores. So you can see African Americans at the bottom. Harvard treated different people differently based solely on race. That's racism. Colleges can't do that anymore. Last year, the Supreme Court ruled racism is bad. It's un-American. Colleges can't discriminate because of race. You'd think Kamala Harris, the karate VP, ready to kick down doors of discrimination, would love such a ruling. Not so fast, because it hurt blacks.
It is a complete misnomer to suggest this is about colorblind, when in fact, it is about being blind to history, being blind to data, being blind to empirical evidence about disparities, being blind to the strength that diversity brings to classrooms, to boardrooms.
All right, so now the twisted logic explained. Asians should kick down doors built and reinforced by Democrats to help blacks. It's kind of like the problem of pandering to the pro-Hamas types while still keeping the Jewish vote. In a larger sense, that's the problem with dividing Americans into groups and pitting us against each other. The founders envisioned America as one place, as one people, as Americans. That's why the president and vice president swear a loyalty to the Constitution that is supposed to protect all of us equally. truly a radical idea. Nowhere is dividing America more prevalent than America's college campuses, the one place where we actually could bring all kids together. We tell them, in fact, on college campuses, they are mostly victims, and the white kids are the oppressor. That's diversity, equity, and inclusion in a nutshell. Across America, though, the pendulum is swinging back. States in green have proposed laws against DEI at universities. Orange states have already passed them. You'll note North Carolina there. UNC Chapel Hill just announced they are ending their DEI program and putting the money towards police and campus safety. North Carolina, U.S. Representative, co-chair of the House Doctors Republican Caucus, Greg Murphy, is with us. Welcome back to the program, sir. Thank you. This is from Roy Cooper, who is the governor of the state, the Democratic governor. Unfortunately, we have lost his comments, but he admittedly doesn't like them. I think we can agree that he doesn't like that this has happened. How is this going to really make a difference at UNC for public safety?
Well, Leland, I think UNC is on the vanguard of the pendulum swinging back in the country. DEI, in its most, just as you pointed out, in its most common derivative, is divisive. And what is diversity? Have anybody yet to explain to me? Is it diversity in just what somebody looks like? Is it diversity in opinion? Because you sure as hell don't have diversity of opinion on faculties on campuses where 98% are Democrat. What we need to do is go back to treating people like people, go back to the damn golden rule, and get rid of all this identity politics nonsense. And I'm happy to see UNC leading and doing that.
All right. Look, you can eliminate the name of an office. You can eliminate a couple of jobs. You can say that we don't believe in this anymore. As you point out, though, 98% of faculty on these campuses are liberal Democrats, just sort of how universities have been. You're not going to really change how they act, though, are you?
No, but I think what it does is it sets a tenor. It says, look, we're not going to be delving into this identity politics and everything anymore. You know, Leland, I've seen a syllabus recently of a college campus of a professor teaching multivariate calculus who talked about all her white privilege and everything. The crap of the politics in classrooms needs to leave. The professors need to teach their damn subject and keep their personal politics out.
I understand. I'm glad you're here for this conversation. But at what point is this the federal government's purview?
Sure.
Versus the states and the universities' purview? As conservative Republicans, how is telling universities that are state institutions what to do is Congress's purview?
We have a thing called the ADA, the Anti-Discriminatory Act. It says no discrimination should occur. And this is, again, what the Founding Fathers said. And now what the DEI programs do is they license discrimination. And that nonsense needs to stop. And this is a federal issue. They receive federal funds on every college.
That's a good point. But I know you'd had a bill about this in terms of medical schools and everything else. Yeah. The flip side of this is Republicans are seeing Black and Latinos starting to come over, especially to Donald Trump, but to Republicans as well. Is there a political risk in coming out so strongly against programs that admittedly really help a lot of people and give some people a real opportunity?
Look, the real help and opportunity of individuals should have started long before the day of the job interview or the admissions interview. It should have gone back to grade school. It should have gone back to nuclear families. It should have gone back to all the things where education starts at the home. It doesn't need to start at the finish line. And we're doing an absolute disservice for those individuals to lead them down a path where perhaps they're not quite yet ready, prepared for.
Right, but we're doing a terrible job, I think we can all admit, on helping have two-parent households, on helping poor kids have Head Start and have better kindergarten classes and have better education in inner cities.
Well, I think that started in 1965 with the Great Society programs, which really created a lot of the disaster that we're in. Look, diversity.
So Republicans have no responsibility there.
No, I think this has happened for 60 years now, or more than that. No, I don't agree with that at all. But I think what we have to get back to the point is we have to get back to understanding that merit really means something these days, and it's not merely the color of one's skin or what your religious belief is. Yes, that's fine. We have diversity, but it has to be diversity in thought also.
And based on merit. Hard to argue with that. Good to see you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
No one can argue that lockdowns and COVID crushed America's teens, especially their mental health. It did. Dr. Drew Pinsky on why diagnosing every sad and anxious kid is only making a bad problem worse. Almost since the show started, hard to believe it's been 3 years, we've been questioning the wisdom of glorifying getting mental health help. And now, an anxiety and depression diagnosis has become almost in vogue. It's no surprise that depression and anxiety diagnoses for young adults are up double digits. In just 4 years, anxiety up 29%, depression up 27% between ages of 3 to 16-year-old and kids. It's also up in young adults 18 to 25 as well. Academic psychologist at Oxford University, Lucy Folks, in a New York Times op-ed today, high-functioning anxiety isn't a medical diagnosis, it's a hashtag. And she added a video for the piece.
Awareness is good. It teaches us to talk about our feelings and it combats harmful stigma. But all this awareness is not reducing rates of mental health problems. What it is doing is convincing some teenagers that they have a mental illness when they don't.
Health and addiction expert Dr. Drew Pinsky, MD, is with us. Good to see you, sir. Thank you. I thought what was most fascinating about that video, when you go back and watch the whole thing, is it's superimposed with all of these TikTok and Instagram videos about anxiety, about ADHD, about depression. A lot of them sell drugs. A lot of them offer diagnoses. And you wonder how much of this big, swell in diagnoses is people kind of wanting to get on the bandwagon.
I absolutely share your concerns. I'm glad you've been bringing awareness about this. The over-pathologizing, the over-labeling of things has gotten way out of control. Two points I want to make, though, before we launch into this. One is be careful what you wish for. I always wanted to raise awareness about mental health. Lo and behold, it has been sort of it's been hashtagged. It's become peer pressure. And the other point I want to make is let's be clear that lockdowns predicted an increase in mental health issues, particularly depression, anxiety, in young people. We destroyed an entire generation of young people, and so of course we're going to see more of this. But even given that, we've become excessively preoccupied. People need to understand that these terms mean, first of all, almost nothing outside of very carefully trained clinical hands. And number two, if it's not impairing functioning, it's probably not an illness. This is the thing. It can be uncomfortable. I think I mentioned to you once before that when Sigmund Freud got to this country and the reporters put a microphone in his face, he said, what is it you plan to do here, Dr. Freud? And he said, well, I hope to understand the difference between true mental illness and ordinary misery. We have become a country that is unwilling to tolerate the ordinary misery of living.
Forget ordinary misery. People don't want to be uncomfortable. And I guess that's the next question, right? Because almost all of the social media psychiatry that exists pushes, perhaps because of economics, mostly drugs and sometimes interventional therapy. I've done at least a little bit of research for this program over the past few years, and some even before that, and it shows that for lots of forms of depression and anxiety, exercise, especially really intense anaerobic exercise, is almost as effective as drugs, but I guess the reason we don't hear about it as much is because there's not as much money to be made from it, right?
That absolutely has to be some of what's going on here, for sure. We have over-medicalized, over-pharmacologized everybody. Look, medicines have a role. Do not get me wrong. They can be life-saving. They can be exquisitely important. And they're also at the same time overused. And people, because they expect pills to be a solution to the ordinary misery of living, they make grave error on two fronts. One is medicines are dangerous. We've just lost track of that. And only when the risk reward is worth it are medications something that you should be contemplating. The other thing is that ordinary misery is motivating. It builds up efficacy and the ability to respond flexibly and with resiliency and grit, the things that we hope to sort of create in a healthy society. And we've just let that behind to this sort of passive fix me because I need to feel better. And that is a problem. It's a problem.
Look, the pendulum always swings too far, right? We saw that with the opiate crisis in America. It swung so far of overprescription, and now all of a sudden you have a knee replacement and they say take 2 Tylenol because we don't want you to be addicted to opiates. Where is the line, right, for people who say, okay, I've listened to Dr. Drew and I have grit and I have resilience and I want to be strong, but boy, I really need some help and the exercise isn't doing it for me? At what point do people say, okay, there's a point where taking some pills, maybe for a limited period of time, can really help and is worth the risk?
Absolutely, 100%. And the easy sort of threshold to look at, as I mentioned earlier, is functioning. Am I having trouble functioning in any area of my life, socially, interpersonally, with work, my legal status? Am I not taking care of my health? Am I sleep disrupted? And it's going more than a couple of weeks? That is a time. Or are there serious symptoms? Am I thinking of hurting myself? Am I no longer taking care of myself? Am I hearing or seeing things? And by the way, it's very important to get a medical evaluation when you have these serious symptoms, because oftentimes there can be a medical problem, if not contributing to these symptoms. So it really is important to get into skilled hands. The other issue is, if you do meet criteria for a bona fide illness, trying to find a psychiatrist in this country right now is daunting. That we have a grave shortage, and that's the next threshold. So we're both underdoing it and overdoing it, right? We're underprescribing, undertreating, and overprescribing and overlabeling. It's the worst of both worlds.
Yeah, you stole the words right out of my mouth in terms of how difficult now it is to find really good, really competent mental health care from people who care and who have the time, as you've always pointed out, the time to go through with people and figure out really what's wrong and really how to help. Your perspective is always an important one, sir. It's good to see you as always. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, appreciate you. We wrote about this issue first in War Notes today, warnotes.com to subscribe for free. That is our daily newsletter that comes out every day with our thoughts on the most important stories of the day. You can respond to the email, warnotes.com to subscribe, and then you can respond to the email that comes out. Also talk to us on social media, at Leland Vittert on Instagram and Twitter. Here's Chris.